So this wonderful Dr. Diamond, look, this doctor, has already been through 2 divorces and both were really painful for him. It was only on the 3rd try that he and his wife decided to keep working on the relationship and not split up, no matter how much either of them might want to. Of course, you might be thinking right now, okay, enough with the mistakes. We thought he was a normal guy, and he... Someone definitely just thought that. I can practically hear it. But look, the man kept messing up, kept getting lost. Does he learn from it? We can see that he does, just not right away. He could have been smarter than all of us put together and figured it out the first time. He didn't. No big deal. Our dear doctor. He only got it on the 3rd try. Some people only get it on the 3rd try. The important thing is, it clicked. And there's this thing you could call an emotional abyss. Not everyone can go down into it, really live through their mistakes and foolishness deeply enough to pull out real knowledge or an insight and share it with the world. Not everyone can do that. So let's not criticize or judge the doctor, because by the 3rd time he changed course. And here's what he says next. He compares the 3rd stage of a relationship to a virus you have to catch and get over, you know? Once you've had it, your resilience to those kinds of irritants rises sharply. See, at this stage, you stop seeing each other as an ideal. You finally get over that idealized image of your partner, and very clearly what you've actually got in front of you is an ordinary human being, whom you now learn to love without the crutch of illusions. And we all have those, because from childhood we were taught a whole set of ideas about what right relationships are and what wrong ones are, and without relying on hormones. And that part isn't up to us. Nature doesn't ask. It says, we love this one, period, end of story. It couldn't care less. And it turns out you really can love another person once you move beyond those limits of hormonal surges. Because when they die down, some people go, well, that's it, bye, next hormonal high. And without those illusions too. So yes, all of this is possible. You can get through it. Now, here's what we're talking about. Only at this point, after you've made it through the 3rd stage, do you start building real love. Before that, it really wasn't there yet. Because only after stage 3 do you start accepting each other as you truly are. We wear masks for a long time. We hide a lot from each other, especially at the beginning, and especially before the wedding. Oh, you know how it is. And if the man can sometimes be a bit more awkward, no offense, gentlemen, I include myself here, we're sometimes just more straightforward in this department. Women are often taught not to show their flaws before the wedding, and after the wedding to allow themselves more freedom. Not that it's everyone, of course. I'm not trying to paint everyone with the same brush. But again, women often act more wisely in relationships. It's not about better or worse. It's just an observation, a statistical tendency. Sure, some people mess up. Some, as they say, flunked that class and can't keep up the act. But the vast majority of moms tell their daughters, before the wedding, don't behave any which way. After the wedding, go ahead as much as you want. But before the wedding, be careful. Otherwise, it may be hard later to help you build your personal life. Naturally, there are tons of jokes about this. But in the end, look what happens. On the 3rd stage, we finally run into the real person. And sometimes start getting angry with the real person. The real one. Before that, we mostly lived with an illusion. And here they are, in all their glory. As much as I joke about it, that's the truth in full view. That's the real person. Right there, in plain sight. And now you start making a conscious choice. If you keep moving forward, you transition to the 4th stage. Most people sadly don't, but those who do, kudos. This is where it gets really interesting. Let's move on to stage 4. This is the stage of real, lasting love. Once those negative storms that accompanied stage 3 recede, a period of deep, solid reflection begins. The two of you start carefully analyzing what, after all, was going on with us before, and why it tossed us around so much. Put simply, only now do you start studying each other's default settings, yours and your partner's. And most likely, and I honestly think this is one of the most important points in the whole relationship school, I'm saying it now, you hit that third stage perfect storm, because up to then, you hadn't really studied or explored the other person's default settings. Now you realize this relationship school is entirely grounded in those default settings, because without that, you simply can't move on to stage 4. And it's precisely on stage 4, in that period when you've unpacked each other's default settings, that you get to know each other like never before. Because the root of your shared problems traces back to those default settings, back to childhood, 99% of the time. Even though you can explain it all in today's terms, you didn't buy groceries, you didn't whisk me off to the Maldives, you bought the wrong ring size, you looked at the wrong person, you did this wrong, you said that wrong, you didn't wash this, you didn't treat the child the way you promised. All of that feels super important here and now. But in reality, the live wire that's sparking runs back to those default settings. Look, at stage 4 of a relationship, you're not so much lovers for each other as you are psychologists for each other. And that's the right place to be. I get that many of you don't want to play psychologist because it really is an emotionally and morally demanding role. You're constantly supporting and rebalancing each other. It's not easy. But look, it's the traumas we lived through in childhood, our parents' divorce, abuse at home, infidelities, the foolish things and mistakes that happened, that directly shape how we behave once we've grown up. And naturally, we end up behaving any which way. And at this 4th stage, maybe for the first time in your life, your selfishness takes a back seat. From now on, you form a healthy attachment to each other, in the good sense of the word. Not out of neurosis, not out of compensatory, deficit-based dynamics. Your emotional bond grows so deep that you start healing each other's wounds. That's what the 4th stage of love is. Most often it happens in marriage, but it can happen in a regular relationship too. And here's the thing. This kind of strategy makes your connection even stronger because it neutralizes any conflict. You'll both know exactly what sets it off and how to avoid it. If you've truly figured out your basic settings, the patterns laid down in childhood, you simply leave no room for conflict. You just don't need it anymore. It doesn't inspire you. It doesn't fit you. And what's far more interesting to you is the next stage. Now, many people think that once you've healed each other, that's the end of the story. Fairy tale ending, in the best sense. And there they lived happily ever after, and spent a day thanking Eric. That's it. By stage 4, we're cured. Remember the famous Soviet comedy, Ivan Vasilyevich Changes Profession? They'll cure you, they'll cure me. We've healed each other. We've arrived. We're not sick anymore. Cue the dancing, every dance we know. But our friend Dr. Jed Diamond talks about a 5th stage, love that can change the world. I'd tweak that a bit. I'm not trying to tear down the concept, just refine it. I'd add, love that can change your planet. À la Saint-Exupéry. Remember the Little Prince. Because we're not talking about the entire world. We're talking about your planet. And each of us has a different planet, some very small, some very large. So we're talking about a love that can change your planet, within your own relationship as a couple. Still, as the good doctor says, This is already a kind of ultimate form of love. And not everyone gets there. Because many couples prefer to stay at the fourth stage for life. They think, we're not hurting anymore. We feel good. We're just chilling at a beach resort all day, slathering sunscreen on each other, never arguing. And we're fine. And honestly, that's not bad, especially if you used to argue a lot and get tired of each other. We can genuinely be happy about that. The thing is, if your love is strong, love really does make us far more expansive as human beings. Truly great people are, more often than not, in love. Really in love. And the logic is simple. The two of you have already made it through a lot of problems and obstacles, and you didn't give up. Many others did. So why not use that experience for the good of the world, right? That calm wisdom first shows up as support for your own kids. Your children stop feeling like opponents. You don't yell at anyone anymore. You're no longer tormented by their flaws. You start to show them real wisdom and patience. That mostly shows up at stage 5. Well, sure, at stage 4 too, but still. Then that love can spread to other children, and you begin supporting a lot of people. Next, it can extend to charities. You start supporting some communities. Your love is already so mature that you don't need to keep feeding it, you know, so it naturally looks for outlets in other good deeds. Immature love just feeds the two of you, and basically there's no energy left for anything else. And that whole immature pattern of, do you love me? Say it again. You haven't told me you love me for 2 days. Maybe you don't love me. All that nonsense is, at best, stage 2. More likely stage 1. And at stage 3, you basically hate each other. At stage 4, there's no point sitting there telling each other 5,000 times a day that you're in love. And at stage 5, even more so. The feeling is so mature that, again, there's no need to constantly stoke it. It's already there, like a real wellspring that doesn't just dry up. Of course you support each other. But it's no longer about, you didn't say anything, you didn't support me, you forgot my birthday, or anything else that has to do with me. By then that stuff just doesn't get to you anymore, right? They keep living together despite each other's mistakes. They don't pay them any attention at all. At stage 3, these mistakes trigger emotional blow-ups. At stage 2, they upset people. At stage 1, we try not to notice them. We just close our eyes and pretend they aren't there. And at stage 5, we see them, but nothing about it triggers us at all. So at this stage, partners just don't focus on each other's flaws, period. Why? Because there's no unconscious agenda to find a justification for breaking up. In couples that haven't made it past the 3rd stage, that's exactly what kicks in during crises and flare-ups. It keeps happening. In critical situations it spikes, and all those fears come to the surface. It's like, I value myself, I'm not forgiving you for this, get out, bye. In other words, they're unconsciously focused on catching their partner making mistakes, proving to themselves that their partner isn't perfect, calling themselves an idiot. And that's it. Off they go on the hunt for the next one, even if only in their head, not in real life. So by the 5th stage, the urge to find fault with each other over anything basically disappears. At this point, they would never, not even in their worst nightmares, try to provoke each other, rake up old grievances, or dredge up unpleasant memories. They don't recall anything bad anymore. If they bring something up, it's only to have a laugh about it. So this stage is, as you can imagine, essentially a summary of your relationship so far, mistakes included, because you're unlikely to get here without going through stage 3. It means you did make some mistakes. You just worked through them. Test yourselves. Missteps and mistakes aren't the scary part. What's scary is sliding back and never even making it to stage 4. where you heal each other. And at stage 5, some couples start creating together. They co-write books, for example. They launch large-scale social projects. Who are some examples? For instance, I really like Alan and Barbara Pease. I've been following them my whole life. Alan Pease is the guy who wrote Body Language. It used to be my absolute favorite. It was a real revelation to me. I couldn't believe there was a whole language of gestures. Wow. They also have a really good book on how to build relationships in general. Alan and Barbara Pease are outstanding authors, real pros. And at the 5th stage, naturally, you see big family businesses. Think the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, the biggest of the big. At that level, it wouldn't occur to anyone, even in their worst nightmares, to wage domestic wars or turn everyday life into battles. If, just to indulge in conspiracy theory terms, your wealth runs into the trillions, and even if it's many times less, it's still more than enough not to bicker over nothing, not to be shouting "gotcha" at each other at 98 years old, not to nitpick or dredge up old trivialities. In other words, people can genuinely live like this for generations, and because they pass on this ability to live at the 5th stage, they naturally end up doing truly fantastic things, reaching great heights, and so on. But that's me going way up the scale. If we come down a notch, it's still the 5th stage all the same. Take the Beckhams, David and Victoria. If you really read up on them, there are quite a few questions about this couple. Quite a few. Yet they're not at each other's throats. They really do know how to live and work together. And they're a very influential couple in the world. Even though, at first glance, it's just a singer and a footballer, their influence is real. Kudos to them. I'm also a big fan of Adriano Celentano and Claudia Mori as a couple. They've been together for over 50 years, which is, of course, impressive. And now, naturally, you may be wondering, how do you reach the 4th and 5th stages? And stay there? What actually helps with that? Let's go through it step by step, in practical terms. First off, it's important to accept not only your partner's strengths, but also their shortcomings. When we're truly capable of loving, we don't try to radically remake the other person. Especially since the very idea of flaws is highly subjective and, all too often, under the pretext of helping them get rid of their flaws, we start imposing our own world view on them. And where does that urge come from? It's often a way of compensating for our own imperfections and of not accepting our own shadow, in the psychological sense. I've already explained what I mean by one's shadow. That's why it's important to learn to respect your differences and to distinguish between what simply isn't to your taste and the real problem areas you can calmly discuss, work through, and agree on. To be clear, this doesn't mean that if something bothers you, you just start turning a blind eye to it. But you can work through it. You can talk, or again, you can accept certain things. At the very least, it doesn't set you off. Another important point, your relationship is open and honest. There's a saying, love doesn't wear masks. People wear masks. Our imperfections wear masks. That's where the urge to pile on lots of makeup comes from, or whatever else. To keep showing off, or to endlessly take photos from your good side, and so on. Everything else loves to wear masks. Love doesn't, because you're no longer trying to make some particularly favorable impression. When we're talking about real, mature love, you start sharing your hopes and dreams, and your fears too. But that only works if your partner is mature as well. They won't use those fears against you. And this, by the way, can be truly foolish. You share something personal with someone, and in a crisis they start saying, "Aha, now I see why you're so bad. Oh, and here you did something wrong back then. And now I can link it to such and such from your past. And wow, I'm so clever. Now I know everything." Of course, you may feel like giving that overly clever person a tough verbal dressing down, Because let me say this up front. If someone shares something with you personally, in confidence, you have no moral right to use it against them in any fight. Ever. Anyone who does that is acting in an extremely immature and destructive way. And in a crisis, they go, "Aha, now I see why you're such a bad person. You acted badly back then, and now I'm linking it to that thing from your past. I'm so smart, I know it all." This is not about growth, not about moving to the next stage. They just start brandishing someone else's vulnerability, which only amplifies their own hang-ups, weaknesses, and imperfections. They take what you placed in their hands, in trust, with respect, with a certain tenderness, something you shared with them. And then, because their basic triggers flare up, they begin yelling and using it against you. Such behavior is unacceptable, regardless of gender or circumstances. Please get this. You must never use against your loved one what they confided in you. Never. It is morally and humanly unacceptable. Sure, you might say, "That's you yelling, Eric. I want to do it and I will." Well, if you want to, go ahead. What else can I say except, fine, I bless you. If you're really into staying stuck on the third stage for life, be my guest. You'll always find another partner, a second, a third, a 20th, naturally. But some horizons in life you'll simply never see. Ever. If that's part of your plan, be my guest. Even if it doesn't sit right with you, at least learn not to use it against the person. Don't double down or lock horns because of your own hang-ups. Yes, they might have been wrong. Yes, they might have messed up. But they're being honest. And honesty is a core value at stages 4 and 5. You never violate it. You don't go around testing things like this. What if I take these big tailor's scissors, huge green ones like my grandma had, and slice a carotid artery? What would happen? I'm just curious. Why not? I want to know. You get that there are people, maybe a couple of extremely irresponsible people on the planet, who actually had that brilliant idea. Why not find out? Same story here. Why not weaponize what we share? I want to, so I will. It always ends badly. So if you can hear me, please hear this. It's important and will help everyone, just at different times. Whatever you share intimately must never be used against the other person. Even if you're breaking up, even if you're in a heated conflict, even during meltdowns, rough patches, or blow-ups. Because that way you keep a chance to work through it and move forward. Don't turn into people who attack each other. Be the kind of people who first help heal each other, and second, grow together. Because that brings you closer to greater horizons in life than just having a nasty falling out over something you happen to latch onto. Next, the main criterion for staying in stages 4 and 5 is understanding that it matters to me that my partner is happy. And yes, we make concessions sometimes. It doesn't bother us at all, because we genuinely enjoy responding to our partner's wishes. We can sometimes put their needs above our own, and it doesn't unsettle us. We calmly tolerate some inconveniences or boredom, accept imperfections and periods of separation. It no longer rattles us. We don't go hunting for rigid rules like never be apart for more than X days. I call that picked up off the street. Random advice you just pick up and swallow. I once read about a reckless guy who swallowed a live slug on a dare and died from a brain infection. The point is, you can't just put anything into your mouth or your mind. We calmly put up with some inconveniences and boredom. We accept imperfection, time apart, and other things. It doesn't set us off anymore. We don't go looking up rules like, you must never be apart for more than X days, because after that. Most of the time, it's just another hang-up, some empty abstraction. We pick it up and drag it into our lives. I call that picked up off the street. You're walking down the street. You spot something on the ground. Pick it up off the street and eat it. Great. I once read about a reckless guy who, on a dare, decided to eat a live slug. He thought, why not? He grabbed it and swallowed it. Turned out it carried microorganisms that can severely harm the human body. He developed severe encephalitis. The doctors couldn't stop it, and he just died. The point is, you can't just shove anything into your mouth or into your brain. You can't. It's dangerous. You can't stuff yourself with every bit of random nonsense, all those dubious tips and other junk that keep multiplying. That junk destroys our lives and our relationships. And sometimes we're like, why not try? What a fine-looking slug. Let's see what happens. Well, that's what happens. So, look. Why do we need all this then? Why are we getting back to normal life, slugs aside? Let's leave such experiments to people who don't think about consequences. Why do we stay at stages 4 and 5? What's the point of it all? Because we help another person grow and support them in fulfilling their purpose, helping bring out their best. At this stage, we start playing a game. Who can do more for the other? It's a game for two. We sort of compete in helping each other and doing more to unlock the other person's potential. The game is genuinely engaging. Here, the process itself wins. The score doesn't matter. But it has to be mutual. Once one partner stops playing, it's unlikely the balance can be restored. On that note, reaching this state, what I call an evolving, expanding spiral where we mutually enrich each other, is the real secret. At the 4th to 5th stage, we start playing a game. Who can do more for the other? It's a game for two. We kind of compete to help each other and do more to bring out the other person's potential. This game is genuinely engaging. Here the process is the win. The score doesn't matter. But it only works if it's mutual. As soon as one of you stops playing, you'll most likely be unable to restore the balance. On that note, getting to this kind of game, where we enrich each other, in what I call an evolving, expanding spiral, is the real secret. You have to grow into it, get there, and not ruin it.